Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer invisible base plate with removable arms on a 2018 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. So this is what your base plate is going to look like when it's installed. And overall, it's got a pretty good look to it in the fact that the crossbar is actually hidden behind here, and it really does look pretty decent on the Jeep as it doesn't protrude past the bumpers, but yet you can still get to all of your attachment points with no problem. So you're hooking up your safety chain loops, not a problem there. And your arms are going to be pretty simple as well. These are going to just drop in, and with the twist, you can see it's locked there. Then you just use your pin, slide this through, lock it in place, and then you're ready to put your tow bar on. Now, something I will mention on this is mounting up your actual 6-pull and your breakaway switch on here. It does get a little bit tricky as it doesn't actually have a mounting bracket. A lot of other base plates will have those already on there, or at least a spot that you can do it. Unfortunately, we had to get a little bit custom with ours, and we ended up drilling through our air dam to run our wires, but we already did have to trim out the air dam here to get our actual arm receptacle there. So with the install, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. You are going to have to trim a little bit, and that's kind of the nature of base plates sometimes, especially with the Jeeps here with this style of bumper and air dam combo. Something I will mention, these arms are actually designed to attach to Blue Ox, Demco, or eTrailer tow bars. So if you do have a Roadmaster, you are going to have to get an adapter for your tow bar to attach to them, but we actually have those here at eTrailer, and that way you can still hook up to whatever tow bar you need. And when you're ready to hook up to your base plate, it's going to be pretty easy. Just make sure your arms are in place and you have those pins actually attached. And then we'll just run this through. Put our pin right through there. And then we have our one side already attached. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do the rest and get this all hooked up. Well, let's go over the 5 main components of a flat tow. So when you flat tow your vehicle, the first thing you're going to need on the vehicle side is going to be the base plate, and that's going to attach to the vehicle's frame and allow you to hook up to the tow bar. So the tow bar is going to be the connection point between your base plate and the RV itself, allowing it to actually connect the two. Now, going along with that, if the vehicle was to ever accidentally disconnect, that's where your safety chains come in place. And this one actually, you can see, has a nice safety chain loop right next to the arms, and that's going to run back to where your hitch is on the RV, and that's going to hold it all together. Now, going along with accidental disconnect, you actually have a breakaway switch here. And that way, if the vehicle does actually become disconnected and your safety chain loops fail, this will pull this plug, putting the brakes on the vehicle and bringing it to a stop. That way it's not rolling down the highway. And then finally, you're going to have your diode wiring. And your diode wiring, your umbilical here, runs from your 7-pull to your 6-pull. And that's going to actually send your signals from the RV to the towed vehicle. So when you're slowing down, or if you're making a turn, or just have your running lights on, it's going to transfer it to the taillights of the vehicle, let people know behind you what you're actually doing. And it's going to keep you safe and legal. To begin our installation, we're going to be starting by taking off the plastic push pins here up top. Now, I'm going to be using a trim panel removal tool, and these are really helpful for those push pins. I never really used one of these until I started working here, and it really does make a big difference. Now, if you don't have one of these, we actually have these here at eTrailer, or you can just simply use a flathead screwdriver, as that works pretty well. So you can see the slots here on our plastic push pins. I'm just going to kind of raise one side up. A lot of times I try to get underneath it and give it a slight twist. Now, these can be tricky and sometimes they can break, so just take your time. Once you have that top center portion popped out, the rest of it should come out pretty easy. Sometimes you can get it all one go, but you may have to pry this portion out as well. Now, there's going to be another one on the other side, and throughout all this process, as we remove hardware or plastic push pins, keep them in a safe place. It's going to make installation overall a lot easier having all the stuff put back on later on. So make sure you hold on to these in a nice safe spot. So now we're going to go underneath our bumper, and there's going to be 8 plastic push pins. These are a little bit different than the ones that we just removed. Now you're going to have one, you can see this little hole here. There's going to be one tucked up there, and then you're going to see the rest of them along this front edge, and then one more in the hole here. So that makes a total of 8. So go ahead and you can remove those. Like I said, these are a little bit different than the last ones as they don't have that center section, or it doesn't have the groove like the last one, but I'll pull this one out and show you kind of what we're working with. So they're pretty large here. Same thing though, just you can see there's a spot where you can pry those up and that should come out pretty easy. So let's go ahead, we'll get those 8 removed. This one, it looks as if it could be kind of tricky to do a straight shot, but you can kind of get behind it, just kind of going on the back side here of the bumper and be able to get those as well. So with our plastic push pins removed, we're next gonna go into these little indents here, and you're gonna see an 8mm screw there. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. Now the air dam should be coming off once you have these taken out, so just have a hand ready, and we can actually set this aside for now. So this should just drop out. So now we're going to be removing the nuts on the back side of the actual bumper. There's going to be a total of 8, so 4 on each side, and you might not be able to see them easily, but if you kind of take a look back, you'll see that they are going to be on the studs of the bumper. There should be 2 on each side. So we're going to be using an 18mm socket. We'll go ahead and get those all removed. Now if they are tricky to get to, you might have to grab an extension, and you're going to need a deep well socket because of the studs here. So if you need an extension to get a little bit more room, that might work well. But once they're kind of loose, you should be able to actually hand thread some of these off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave actually one nut kind of just on there as a precaution as I move to the other side. That way it's still holding it up. We don't have to worry about anything falling off. So now we're going to be removing the side bolts. There's going to be the bracket that kind of feeds right where we were working at, and you'll see there's going to be the bolt right here. We're going to be taking that off. Now we are going to need that for reinstallation later, so make sure you hold on to that. And that's going to be a 5/8, so we can go ahead and get this loosened and taken out. So we'll hold on to these. Now the bracket will actually slide out. We are not going to be using these for reinstallation, so you can actually just set these aside. If you want to keep them in case you go back to a factory front again, you could probably do that, but for now we're going to set this aside. So now on our passenger side, we're going to be getting ready to pull this bumper off, but we want to actually disconnect the electrical components. And sometimes when you pull the bumper off, you can actually have someone help you hold it there and then unplug it. But I think it's going to be easy to actually gain access to our fog lamp plug here. So if we see it, it's going to be mounted up here. We'll just simply push on this button, and then it actually comes loose there. Just be careful about your bumper, make sure that doesn't fall off. Hopefully you still have those nuts kind of hand tightened on there just to prevent that. But this clip with a little push here should separate. And sometimes pushing the plug in with that tab down will help loosen it up. So there we go, we got that separated. And now you can grab an extra set of hands, but we're gonna be pulling this bumper off. I think I can actually get this off pretty easily here. So just slide it out. It's also a good time to check to make sure there's no other electrical connections present. And if there are, you're gonna wanna make sure those are unplugged. Now we can go ahead, set this aside. So now we're going to want to grab our washers that came in the kit and also some tape. It doesn't really matter what kind of tape, but something that you can poke a hole through easy. So I'm just using painter's tape. And what we're going to do, we're just put our washer here on our tape. And then this is going to actually kind of line up right here. So just go ahead, make sure that's in place. And then you can actually take a screwdriver, a pen, and I can use my finger here, just poke a hole through there. But we're going to do that for the outside holes, so we have the 2 here as well as the 2 on the other side. So now it's time to actually get the base plate in place. Now if you need an extra set of hands, because these are fairly heavy, we're going to be putting in those side bolts that we took off that were in the bracket. So make sure you have these handy. And the way we're going to do this, we'll just slide it in place here. It might be a little tight, but we'll get this to kind of slide in there. And you can see it's bent here, so it actually shapes to the frame pretty well. So once in place, we'll slide this up, and you're gonna see this hole will actually align where we took out that side bracket, allowing us to get our hardware. So again, it might take a little bit of wiggling around to kind of get this in place, but once we move that up like that, I'm just gonna take our bolt and just hand tighten it in. You don't need to tighten up too tight, because that way we can still have movement to align it on the other holes. So now we're gonna go on the side. We're gonna be attaching our serrated head bolt here, and that's gonna go in this kind of hexagonal shape spot. And we're also gonna have our welded on little nut plate here. So this is gonna slide up. You're gonna see, you're gonna want the bolt to go in this way. Now, if you need to align this to make it a little bit easier, you can actually put a like an extension or a screwdriver in these holes here to kind of align it up as you need to. Now, in the instruction manual, they say that you need to potentially enlarge the hole. So if that's the case, you might want to take a grinding bit and open that up, but make sure it is properly aligned. Ours seems to have no problem. So I'm going to slide this up into our frame. Little pro tip too, before doing this, sometimes it's easy to actually take the bolt and go ahead and thread it through. It's just gonna make it a lot easier to hand tighten this in. Sometimes that powder coating can get in the threads, making it a little bit tricky to feed these in. So I just kind of run mine through once or twice just to kind of make sure that it threads through all right. So next we'll be trimming our air dam, and I'm just using the templates that were supplied with the instructions. They're pretty nice. I simply tape them up, and you'll see the center line here, it's gonna go with this little bulge. And I just ran it to where the bulge starts. I actually put our line here, and you can see it is specific to each side. So make sure you have the correct one there. And I've just gone ahead and taped it down nice and tight. So I'm gonna go ahead, drill our holes, and then that's gonna give me my basic layout, and I can go back and cut that out. And this is just gonna gain us access for our base plate arms to actually be able to slide through here, or at least the receiver portion of it. So pretty quick here, we'll just, we'll make our drill bit. They have a .375 drill bit, really just kind of making a mark here. I'm gonna go ahead and use this as a template. And then as far as cutting these out, you can actually use like a pair of tin snips, you can use an angle grinder, a Dremel, kind of whatever is your cutting method. Just take your time here, and then once we actually cut this out, I'll go back and file it up. Now I've gone ahead and I've made our cuts based on the template, and you can see it is gonna need to go a little bit wider, but that's okay, we can always cut more. So it's easier to go with the smaller template size and then kind of custom fit it to ours. That way it's gonna get a nice clean fit on it. So I'm gonna go back, just trim out a little bit more, and then we should get this mocked up one more time. And once we're happy with that fit, again, I'm gonna go back with a file and just kind of sand this out, make it look nice and clean here on all of our edges. So I've gone back and I've trimmed a few times, just kind of mocking this up. And just to kind of give you an idea of kind of what you're looking at, this is gonna slide over, and under here where we had those 8mm bolts or screws there, that's gonna actually sit into that metal tab there. So it should sit back pretty far here. So as I do that though, and push this up, you can see it's causing the bumper to flex a little bit. So I'm gonna have to widen these out just to gain a little bit more space here. So again, just keep kind of mocking it up until you're happy with it sliding on. And in the instruction manuals, they say that you may have to kind of alter or bend that tab, but you're gonna wanna make sure that you can actually slide this back all the way. A lot of times it was catching on here and on these sides here. So just kind of keep trimming up, make sure it looks nice and clean, and get it to fit properly. While we have the bumper off, we're gonna wanna make sure that we have our safety loops or our chains around. And what this is gonna do, just in case that our hardware fails, this is gonna be a fail safe. It's gonna attach around the actual cross or the frame of the vehicle, as well as our base plate, really holding it in place. So the way I'm gonna do this one, I'm gonna just kind of go ahead and wrap this around here. Let's see if we can't get this to kind of meet up at the same spot to where we can loop this all together. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. You just want to make sure it's not going to make contact with anything. And also something to keep in mind is when we put our air dam back on, this can sit far back, so if this is pushing against it, that could also make it a little tricky. But I think if I go around the side here, that should put us in a good spot to where I can loop these together. So let's see if I can't link them. And if I can, I'd like to actually attach it to this little bracket here. There's a hole. That would be really nice and really secure. But sometimes these cables are not always able to do that. So let us see. It's pretty close here. Now, as far as slack on the chain, it doesn't have to be super tight. The main thing you're looking for is that it wraps around the actual frame of the vehicle and then around our base plate here. So I was able to use our frame hole here to put our loop in, and that should be a nice secure fit. So you can go ahead, tighten our little clip down here, and then we'll go ahead and do that on the other side as well. So now we can actually tighten up our hardware. So we have our new hardware as well as the existing. There are going to be torque specifications in the instruction manual that we'll need to follow, and we'll go ahead and torque these down. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, generally you can rent them at an auto parts store. We also have them here at eTrailer. This is going to be important because it's going to make sure that there's not too much stress on the threads, but it's also going to make sure it's not going to be loose over time. Something else you're going to want to do with all of your hardware is to actually make sure you have a little bit of Loctite on there before really tightening it all down. Okay, make sure you also torque down those factory ones that we have, and then once we have those all tightened and torqued, we pretty much have our base plate installed. Now, if you are doing a flat toe setup, I do recommend waiting to put everything back because you can actually run wires through here, making it a lot easier. Now, I'm going to continue on and put this all back on so you know how to actually get the rest of it put back on, but really it's just going to be the reverse steps of taking it off. It is going to get a little bit tricky while sliding this on, but let's give it a shot. Now, when you're ready to put your air dam and bumper back on, I found that if you've trimmed this out enough, it's going to allow you to slide it on one go. It's going to make it a lot easier than trying to get both of these to latch into each other. And the reason being, as I flip our bumper up a little bit, we have these nubs here. There's one on each side as well as a center one, and it's really hard to get those tucked into it with it putting it up in two pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead, get these all slid in so it's sitting flush, and I just have a few of our plastic push pins here. I'm gonna just go ahead and feed those in just to kind of secure it in place and hold it when we put this up. So now we're gonna be sliding it onto those studs, or the studs will be sliding through here, I should say. So take your time here, because we also need to feed these through the air dam. I'm gonna get in the front hooked up first. Now also make sure your electrical plug for your fog lamp is out of the way before really pushing your bumper in, as that kind of can become loose and sit in that front area, just like mine is. Now to feed this on the studs, you may have to lift on the bottom portion of the bumper and kind of give it a push, shove kind of motion in the same breath there. And it should kind of settle into place. And you know you'll have it lined up when you get to the top portion, and where our plastic push pins were on the top of the bumper should be aligned. You should see those right there. And that should be our bumper on. So now you can actually take the nuts that were on those studs, go back and get those tightened on. And just a quick reminder, just make sure you get those fog lamps plugged back in. So we'll do that now. And then from there, all we have left is those 8mm screws. Now on this portion, you're gonna see it is kind of sitting against our base plate here. So I can push this back and get these aligned. The instruction manual has you actually bend them to meet where that hole is. I think if you really just push on this a little bit, you should be able to get it aligned. But again, if you need that little bit of extra, just a pair of channel locks on this little metal clip back here should really help kind of align that properly. But then once these are cinched up, that's gonna do it for the base plate installation. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer Invisible base plate with removable arms on a 2018 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.